Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Jim Wolfe. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, Dash, Strong Dogs, and the Preacher Man, A Tale for America. Available for purchase at Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. And guys, Jim was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, Orion Press Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, do yourself a favor and contact our great friends over at Orion Press. You can find out more information on them at orionpressbooks.com. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Jim, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, listen, the pleasure is all ours, and we're very much looking forward to this. Not only, to just have another journey that we can get lost in, but also that underlying message is something that is so powerful, something that is so important, and really can be implemented in all of our lives. So we're really looking forward to the words of wisdom that you're going to be able to relay to us as well, Jim. Now, first and foremost, before we even go into the book, let's start off with you as a writer. Jim, what led you to begin writing as a new career?
Well, I was bringing my first career to a close. My career was that of an environmental compliance advisor, and needed a new career, and it just seemed a natural outgrowth. I did a lot of writing in my career, and I enjoyed it. It was mostly technical writing, but I found that the methods and were pretty much the same, whether it was technical or non-technical. So it's just been a natural outgrowth of my life process.
Jim, without further ado, Dash, Strong Dogs, and the Preacher Man, A Tale for America. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Okay. This is really a story about America in kind of on a small scale. It's about the same difficulties and challenges being faced in a western town in a place called Copperton, Colorado. And it has to do with the fact that we as a nation have adopted high ideals from the Enlightenment and incorporated them into our founding documents. But we've always found ourselves kind of at odds with those ideals, in always falling short. But the story is about the conflicts, mainly the racial conflicts that have erupted in this country. In the Copperton is set in the 1870s, and it has to do with a preacher who is assigned to the town of Copperton to be the local parson. So he comes to town, but he has instructions from his superiors to preach the idea of manifest destiny. That is the idea that the white man was destined to rule all of America and by extension all of the world. But soon he finds himself at odds with Strong Dogs, who is an old Indian woman who raises dogs as part of her work on a ranch. And one day, one of these dogs, a very special one, is essentially ordained by God to come down and help the town resolve its problems. So the preacher meets up with a challenge almost as soon as he arrives, in the form of an old Indian woman who challenges his ideas and basically says that the white man is simply arrogant and wants to steal the lands of the Indians away from them, their land and their freedom. And this is something that kind of shocks Fletcher because it's contrary to what he's been told to preach. And at first, he starts preaching what his superiors have told him to preach, namely that the white man is superior and is intended to rule all of America and displace whoever they want to, inferior races, blacks, Indians, Mexicans, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So the basically the old Indian woman says that he's being arrogant, and he starts to change his message because it's starting to sink in that this is the wrong message that he's been told to preach, and it's totally at odds with the life and teachings of Jesus. So he begins to change his message, and this doesn't sit that well with the white people in the town. But through his acceptance and love of the people, plus all the help that he gets from his Indian friends, strong dogs, and from Dash, who is the other, kind of the third hero in the story. Dash is the dog, by the way, who is sent by God to help out the town.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the things begin to turn around in the town, and then his superiors learn about what he has done, and they are extremely displeased because he is not preaching the superiority of the white man. So that becomes another challenge for him. Basically, it's a story about us as Americans. It's about human beings and the struggles that we face day to day, and that we will always be struggling with, I think. I hope people get hope from the book. It's not one of despair. It's a realization that we are not going to be perfect. We're not going to be a perfect society, but we can be a better one. And that is the main message of the book.
What moved you to write Dash, Strong Dogs, and The Preacher Man?
Well, a lot of it came from current events, having to do with the very toxic social and political environment that we find ourselves in today. Mm-hmm. This is continued really since the beginning of America, back in the 1600s, with slavery and so forth, which I think has been a terrible legacy for this country. And we needed something to counter it. We're still paying the price, I think, for slavery and racial prejudice, and I think we will maybe always be doing so. So it's going to be a constant battle. So I wrote something that I thought might be encouraging for people, to a message of tolerance and love and forgiveness, and tolerance of differences, race, differences in ideas, differences in religion. Those are all part of America, and we need to still concentrate on that.
Jim, you said a mouthful there. I mean, given the history of this country, and I agree. I mean, it's a black mark, it's a black stain on this country, and it's so when we're talking about racism and prejudice. And I'm not going to get too far down this rabbit hole because we can have a whole entire conversation just on that. The book is, of course, the main importance of today's interview, but when we're talking about racism and prejudice, it's so intricately stitched into the fabric of this country that it is very difficult to remove that stain. It's very difficult to try to overcome it and move on. And again, it's a lot deeper than that. I'm very oversimplifying the situation at the moment, but I love what you're talking about here and really where the inspiration for this narrative came from. Next question that I'd love to go into, Jim, what individuals or ideas inspired you when you were writing this story?
I've had a lot of inspirations, different sources. One was from my mother, who was a poor girl from a family in Arkansas, and she raised herself up through college and really worked hard, I think, at attaining the highest ideals of humanity, and so that was a strong influence. Another source is my wife Ginger, because she's such a source of spirituality and fortitude like I've never found before.
Mm-hmm.
Another source was the founding documents of the United States themselves, namely the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And because I believe that those ideals, which we are still striving for, are very important, and we have to keep striving. It's going to be a never-ending battle, We've got to face up to that. But what are the alternatives really? To continue this slide, into a toxic environment that we're in now. No, I think we have to get back to the ideals in the Constitution, which really came out of the Enlightenment, the Age of Reason.
Mm-hmm.
And we need reason now to counter the madness that we're seeing in society. Another source is my Christian faith, because I believe in a God that is love and forgiveness. And finally, I've studied the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, who was, to my mind, the greatest storyteller who ever lived. Only Tolkien could write stuff that soars as high as it does and moves as deeply as his work does. So those have been the main inspirations and influences for me.
Fantastic. I'm right there with you, man. Tolkien is incredible in what he's been able to do. I'm right there with you, Jim. Next question, and I think I can assume the answer to this question, but you know what happens when you assume, Jim, so I'm not going to do that to you. I have you here on the line. I can come right out and ask. In your opinion, what benefit do you hope that your readers will get out of this story?
I hope that they will think. I think that's the main goal for me, is to get them to think, and also to move them deeply, to remember what we're about, what we as Americans are about, in striving to attain the ideals that are laid out in our founding documents.
There you have it. As we start to transition now, Jim, I'm curious, what's on the horizon for you? What story or stories are next in line? And what are you working on now?
I'm working on two stories at the same time. One is nearly finished, I believe. One is called The Art of Hope. And the other is called The Sisterhood of Gracia, which is a story. It's basically about the attempt to save the ecosystem of the earth. And it's the adventures of basically three young ladies who set out to achieve that goal, and it's about their journey. The Art of Hope is about about a lady named Hope, and it has to do with her journey through art and the way in which she uses art to engender hope in people. So those are the two works I'm doing right now.
Fantastic. Jim, I'm curious, amongst all of your books, is there a common thread or a theme for your stories? And if so, what is it?
There is. I think the main theme is hope. And it's sometimes a very hard thing to maintain these days, given our situation socially, politically, environmentally speaking. We're facing extremely challenging times, I think, and we need to face up to it. But we have to do it with an attitude of hope. And the funny thing is that I don't think we can expect much, because we don't know what's going to happen. But we do know that that really hope makes life worthwhile. It makes it worth living, for me, and I think it does for many people. So I think that's the common thread of my stories.
Jim, as we start to tie out here, I love having this platform. Being an artist myself, I'm in a different medium. My listening audience knows this. I'm an actor and a filmmaker based here in Los Angeles. But being an artist myself, I love having this platform to be able to pay it forward, in a sense, to other artists out there listening in. In this instance, other writers out there listening in. Now, Jim, you're someone that has gone through the process and you've written your own narrative. But you've also have gone through the gauntlet of getting the book published. And anybody that has been through the process understands that writing the book is only half the battle. So I'd love to take this opportunity to steal any words of wisdom. Jim, for any new writers out there listening in, what are some words of wisdom that you'd be able to relate to them?
I would say that they should be bold. Just write. Go where the passion leads you. Get the ideas down on paper or on a computer, a napkin, an envelope, anything while it's still fresh in your mind. I can't tell you how many ideas I thought of while lying in bed in the middle of the night, and then those ideas were gone in the morning because I didn't write them down right away. 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, that's often when the best ideas come. You can always polish it up later, but don't overdo the polishing. It's all right if it's a bit rough, as long as it's still impassioned. So don't be afraid to change it back the way you wrote it to begin with.
You know, Jim, I absolutely love the words of wisdom that you just gave, the advice that you just gave, because here's why. Guys, in this instance, we're talking specifically with regards to writers. But couldn't this be applied to really almost anyone or any aspect of life? How often do we find ourselves right on the cusp of doing something that we want to do, and yet we refrain? We hold back, be it fear, be it second guessing ourselves, whatever the case may be. Or be it you're just comfortable in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you don't want to get out to write that idea down. Guys, listen, at the end of the day, ain't nothing to it but to do it, right? I mean, put the words on the page, get the ball moving, get the ball rolling, get the process started. Eventually, those little snowflakes that you start to accumulate will start to accumulate and develop into a snowball, and the momentum will take you down that hill. And as Jim said, you can always come back and edit later. You know, it's not like because you put something on the page, it's hard set and you can't go back and correct it. Just don't second guess in the moment. Don't hold yourself back in the moment. You get something that comes up. You get those moments of inspiration. Write it down. Put it down on the page. And then later, you can always go back and soften the edges. You know what's even more amazing about all of this is we've discussed so much information today, and we're at the end of the interview now, yet we've barely scratched the surface. There's still so much more left to be discovered, and that's why the onus is on you, okay? There's no getting around it. Amazon, Barnes & Noble are the places you have to go. Dash, Strong Dogs, and The Preacher Man, A Tale for America is the title you have to pick up, and Jim Wolfe is the author you have to thank for bringing it to your table. You surely will not be disappointed. Get lost in this fantastic journey while at the same time educating yourself. Jim, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
Thank you for having me.